Thank you very much. Okay, I just introduced myself so we can dive in. I just have to make this so that I can see something here. All right. So in the next 15 minutes, I would like to share with you the results of a qualitative pilot study that we conducted. And it's on psychodrama at the end of life. We did this at the palliative care ward of the TUM University Hospital in Munich in cooperation with our professorship of spiritual care and psychosomatic health, the palliative care unit of the hospital, and the Moreno Institute for Psychodrama in Edenkoben. And our research question was deliberately very open. We asked, how do patients at the end of life make use of the offer of a psychodrama intervention? We did not ask for results or what it would produce in the patients. First, we thought, okay, here comes the offer. What will happen then? That was our research question. And, let's see, yeah. Briefly, my outline for this talk. I will start with some background. What is psychodrama? You're probably asking yourself already. Then I will describe the method of our pilot study. I will present the 6 themes that emerged from the data, offer an overall story, and close with the outlook on a larger study that we are currently preparing. Na, das funktioniert hier nicht. Okay, what is psychodrama? It's a psychotherapeutic method developed by Jacob Levi Moreno that is usually applied in a group setting. And in this group setting, different roles can be played by different persons. And the core idea then is that thoughts, feelings, relationships, whatever, they become tangible when they are staged. Yeah, when the inner world is brought outside into a visible scene. The person does not only talk about something, what is usually in therapy the case, but they get the chance to act it out, to see their inner world in a way with their own eyes, and to give a voice to the figures involved or to change perspectives. So in this way, they make a new experience. If you still don't have an idea how that could work, you will see some examples later. I said originally it was developed for group settings, but since the 2000s, psychodrama has been adapted that it can be introduced into individual therapy, and we then talk about monodrama. That's the word for it. At the bedside, the stage where usually the persons are acting shrinks to a small tray, like this about, and we have standardized wooden figures like you can see on the picture above me. And the patient arranges and works with these figures during the process. Why do we think this method could be suitable at the end of life? Dying confronts people with a loss of control, with relational and physical challenges, and with the task of making sense of their life that now comes to an end. And psychodrama now allows people to act even in a situation where they are physically very limited. It makes, as I've already said, inner processes visible, and they can follow intuitive impulses when they work with these symbols. Okay, now to our study. In the summer of 2022, 10 patients of our palliative care ward accepted the offer to try a psychodrama intervention. They were identified and invited during the normal ward rounds. After a brief warm-up, each person found to their own topic. So the topic was not set, it was very openly introduced. What do you want to look at or something like that? And then they set up a scene on this table stage using those figures and objects that were offered to them. And in the end, a photograph of the final scene was taken. When the condition of the patient allowed it, we had another conversation a couple of days later or the next day, a debriefing. But this was only possible with 5 of the 10 patients that participated. By the way, Eckhard Frick did all the therapies in this pilot study. The interventions and debriefings were audio recorded, transcribed, and analyzed using two qualitative approaches. We worked with reflexive thematic analysis, which you already talked about, and with hermeneutic case analysis in the tradition of Oevermann. And the themes were only included, the themes that I now will introduce to you, present to you, they were only included if they appeared in at least 4 of the 9 completed interventions. Of course, there were more themes coming up, but we wanted to see, okay, what is kind of typical. One of our interventions had to be terminated very early, so the analysis is finally based on 9 cases in this pilot study. Okay, as an answer to our research question, how do patients at the end of life make use of the offer of our psychodrama interventions? We could 6 themes identify. And I will now walk you through them. And for each theme, I will give you an example, and that will help you to have an idea what is really happening there. Okay, in 7 of 9 interventions, patients placed people on the stage. And those were people who had given them strength, self-worth, security, or some kind of comfort. And these were usually parents, children, but there were also partners, friends, colleagues, or positive authority figures like teachers. Okay, now we come to an example finally. The scene you see here was set up by a woman, and she had become pregnant when she was very young and was pressured by her then boyfriend to marry her. And she didn't want that. And her parents then stood by her and helped her raise this child. They protected her from the boyfriend's violence and alcoholism. And you can see now on this picture how closely the patient and mother, father, and the daughter are standing together. And you can see the boundary, that is the string here, that sets a boundary to the other side where there is the boyfriend and the red symbol that symbolizes the alcohol. At the time of the intervention, this patient was again in a situation where she wanted to draw a line. She had decided to stop her chemotherapy, and her daughter, who's of course in the meantime a grown-up woman, had not accepted this decision fully. And by staging this earlier scene, she reactivated a secure attachment experience that she had made in her life. And we think that with that, she probably activated the inner resources that she needed for the decision that she now had to face. We come to the next theme. In 5 of 9 interventions, patients staged situations in which they had mastered some difficult challenge. And I just jumped to the example. Here we have a patient, and he built up a scene where he remembered a time when he was a schoolboy, and it was a huge kind of celebration at the end of the school year, and he was suddenly pushed on stage. He wasn't planned to be on stage, but he was pushed onto stage. And there was the big audience with his parents in the audience. And it was even more complicated because the person who was supposed to change pages for him when he was playing on the piano got confused. So it was very difficult, but it still worked out. He made it. And on the pictures, you can see the audience on the left with mom and dad. And on the right, he even has a symbol for being nervous, for nervousness. I don't know, Lampenfieber is a wonderful German word. Stage fright. Yeah. And you see the piano and the person who was supposed to change the pages. And we as researchers, by interpreting the scene, we saw an analogy to his present situation. He will die, and he has not volunteered. He's pushed into this situation. And there, of course, there are challenges, there are complications. It's a scary situation. He's overwhelmed as he was in this situation. But by remembering how he mastered the situation, he reminds himself that something one does not know how to do can still go well. Okay, our next example and our next theme. Our next theme are pleasant images. In 4 of 9 interventions, patients staged some comforting, positive scenes. We had a beach with warm water. We had happy children, a garden. We even had horses on the stage, which one time had been the passion of one of the patients. Our scene here was set up by a patient who returned to a childhood memory. He was playing football with his friends. You can see him even made a nice circle. That's the group of the friends and the ball in the middle. In the corner up there, you can see the church. That was the place where they were always playing. And he then described his stage setup as an anchor into the positive past. So we think in the monodrama intervention, memories can come back to life. They were visible, they can be staged there, and they can bring joy and relaxation and an anchor into the positive past in the present moment. We have not only seen joyful setups. In 4 of 9 interventions, distressing memories came onto the stage. There were traumatic images, experiences of violence, accidents, and human suffering. In our example here, one patient remembered standing on a railway platform after work, and then a steel boiler in a nearby power plant had exploded. And in the scene, you can see there's an adult, not named adult, a child, and a cemetery nearby. And the large symbol here is the explosion. And next to the explosion, he placed a symbol for violence. And during the intervention, which is possible with psychodrama, the symbol for violence transformed into a house of God. And then he titled the scene, My Life. Monodrama allows patients to confront and re-narrate such difficult, sometimes traumatic material actively, with the support, of course, of a therapist. And we think that the table stage creates a distance and kind of a sense of control, which can make the confrontation with this difficult material bearable. Theme 5 is values and spirituality. In 7 of our 9 interventions, patients addressed somehow their core values or their spiritualities. They spoke what matters in the end, what will remain after death. They spoke about nature, beauty, kindness, love, and connection to God. In our example here, the patient first staged a scene of believers in Poland approaching a Black Madonna. It's not here on the picture. That was kind of her first stage. And she said, I wish I had such a faith. I cannot grasp it, but I wish it existed. And then going on in this process, the Madonna was placed in an unreachable area. She ascended into the sky together with Joseph and the angels. Everything disappeared, just as this kind of faith is not graspable for her. Can you say that in English? And then came up what will she asked herself in a way, what will stay? And what comes up then is nature. She think well, she sees that nature is endangered, but she says in the end, nature is indestructible. Nature will prevail because it is boundless. So we have here nature, we have technique. Oh yeah, and we still have the Madonna on the picture, sorry, but it kind of had to go into the corner. And nature was important then. And this was for her a very positive image that remained in the end. And we also could see in this intervention, I do not have the time to tell you all the different steps that she took in between, but it allowed the patient, she kind of descended layer by layer, and pre-conscious images could surface and find their place until she arrived at a point where she could feel her own convictions and a positive value that would give her energy. Okay. We already heard, that was very interesting for me. We heard that patients speak about death, but we had also the impression that is very rarely directly addressed. And also with this stage setting, the possibility to address something indirectly is always given. Okay, maybe because I don't have the time, I jump over this example. Oh, just very quick. The examples are always the best, I think. Here, the patient has chosen to stage the death of his wife 10 years ago. And when his wife was dying, that's him, that's his wife. And that is the close connection, what you see between them. He had visited her every day. And now, in his situation, he was dying quite alone. But he could bring this close connection that he had with his wife on stage and make it visible. Okay, what is now the overall story across all this theme? The monodrama interventions help patients to engage with the challenges of dying in a state of controlled emotionality. We think the central effect lies in the activation of inner resources like secure attachments, experiences of agency, pleasant memories, values, and so on. And where distressing material arises, the table stage offers the distance and the containment needed to engage with it. And also, there's a chance then to rewrite or change the stories. Okay, I jump over the theoretical framing because of time. Because I want to tell you what we are planning in the future. We are preparing a larger study to build on these pilot results. It will be conducted as a qualitatively dominated mixed methods study with a comparison group in this situation. And our interest lies in the effect of the intervention now. We want to explore through in-depth interviews with the patients and through pre-post questionnaires, we want to see what is the effect. And we want to explore systematically whether monodrama could become a meaningful addition to the repertoire of interventions available at the end of life, with the goal to alleviate spiritual and emotional distress and to support the quality of life in the dying situation. Thank you very much.